us all together. Lord, we gather in your name as children of a sovereign God. Forever we proclaim, to God be all glory.
Good morning. How you doing? It is Thursday, March 5th, 2026. Welcome to episode 614 of The Thinking Theologian as we continue our journey through the scriptures. So today we read Numbers chapter 23 through 25. The title of today is A Duplicitous Heart. The focal scripture is in Numbers 25 verse 4, and this is what it says. As the Lord said to Moses, take all the leaders of the people and execute them in broad daylight before the Lord, so that his burning anger may turn away from Israel. So worship matters more than you'll ever know in your personal life. Worship is a battle, and it must be fought for passionately and deliberately. Everything we come in contact with wants to be the focal point of our worship. It can be our jobs, our spouses, our leisure activities, and even our own children. When we worship something, we bend the knee. We give it our full attention. It becomes the affection of our heart. In today's reading, we see what happens when God's people turn to worship another God. This action by the Lord is swift and powerful. It is loud and obvious. As soon as the people begin to worship Baal, the Lord told Moses to take the leaders and kill them in broad daylight. Why? Because idolatry was not going to be tolerated in the house of the Lord. These leaders who led the people away would serve as an example to the entire nation. And so we need to be aware of that God takes this extremely, extremely seriously. And so knowing that, how serious God takes worship and what's going on, the question now must be turned on us. So what about you? Do you worship something other than the Lord? Do you have a duplicitous heart? Now, what I mean by that is, do you say one thing publicly, but live another way privately? And too often believers do this way. They'll praise Jesus with their lips, yet live opposite to what the teachings are, even they know what's going on. There was one church I attended, actually served on staff at, where I was, inviting teenagers to come to church and try to get them there. And I know this happens everywhere, but this is just to kind of tell you how it goes is that there were teenagers interested in attending church, but they looked at me and they said, I can't go to your church of where you go because so many of the students at your church say one thing. That they act and live another way, but yet they go to church on Sunday morning like nothing is wrong. And yet they come to school and they treat me like trash, or they're living a lifestyle that's completely contrary to what the Bible teaches. And these are people who are unbelievers, and that's having a duplicitous heart. Your heart is in two different locations, in two different places, and the Bible tells us that can't happen. Either we're all in or we're all out. There is no in between. And so that is the definition of being duplicitous. And so that is idol worship in your personal life, because you're worshiping the things you want to do. You're worshiping yourself. And so, and also what happened here is what they did is a poor example of how leaders should lead their people. These Israelite leaders claimed to be God worshipers, but instead bow down to a man-made God. Unfortunately, we do the same many times in our worship. And we need to be aware of that. Unfortunately, we do the same thing. And so what would our churches and homes look like if the Lord commanded for idol worshipers to be killed today? So what if the same standard that God used here, the leaders of the church, the leaders of Israel came to our church and said, look, all of you who are worshiping other idols, we're going to have someone take you outside. We're going to execute you in broad daylight because you're worshiping another God instead of the one true God who exists. That is a pretty intense claim here of what's going on. Now, obviously, I'm not advocating for this, but it is a question that must be asked because God takes worship serious. But do we take worship that serious, as serious God does? Too many professing believers live lifestyles that show no evidence of a changed heart. And the greatest evidence of a changed life is a changed heart. The greatest evidence of a changed heart is a changed life. They love the thought of worship, not the reality of true worship, because true worship is costly. To worship the Lord is costly. So I challenge you today to kill anything in your life that is idol worship. It will make a big difference in your thought life and the seriousness of your faith. And if anything, I can say that we need to take our faith more serious, not less serious. We need to be very consistent in what we believe and how we apply biblical standards, because it will make a difference in everything that we do. And so I hope that makes sense, that we can't have a duplicitous heart. And this especially goes to leadership and leaders. You cannot say one thing publicly and live another way privately and expect God to not bring judgment on you, because this is what happens to the leaders of Israel. You say one thing, you say you love me, you say you're going to follow my commands and my statutes, but you go worship a false god. And because you leaders do this, I'm going to take you out in broad daylight and execute you to show the people that worship matters and who you worship matters even more. So let that be a challenge to us to not be in that way where we have to receive judgment that way because we are bad examples of true worshipers. So thank you for being with us here today. Tomorrow we'll be in Numbers chapter 26 and 27.